When it comes to tonight's topic, I think it's safe for us to mention some of the people's names because these episodes are available on your podcast, on your channel. People can subscribe, they can buy them. So let's start with Kristen. Kristen seems as the main character, if I can put a main, it's almost like a story. So Kristen is the main character in your docu series. She comes from the background of the occult, and at some point of her life, she decides to get baptized. She's introduced to Pastor Josh. They step into the river, and can you please tell us what happens to Kristen?
Yeah. So, Kristen's family, her sister and brother-in-law, had been praying for her consistently in the church. They were members in the church. And because they had been praying for her, and they said, Josh knew some of what she was into, some of the practices she was into, and also her drug addiction, which is kind of a symbiotic thing. So when he got the call on a Sunday afternoon, please come baptize Kristen, she wants to be baptized, it took him by surprise as well, because he knew that she would become violently angry with anyone even talking about Christ or the Bible or anything. And so he, when he got the call, he was taken aback, and but he got one of his elders, and they came down and they met them at a park, and they were convinced that Kristen understood the gospel. And so they walked her down to the river. When she first stepped foot in the river, she, in her words, was pulled back and stumbled. And when she got up, discovered that her toe, I think her pinky toe, had been broken back. And it's not a treacherous entryway to the river. It's a boat ramp that goes into a sandy, just very like a zero entry pool entry. Josh asked her if she was okay. She said she was. Do you want to keep going? Yes. They walk her out into the river. As she's standing there between Josh and Chris, was the other elder there in New Haven that were baptizing her. As Josh was, he's describing to the people the justification for her baptism. She's believed in the gospel. She's here to be baptized into Christ's death. And they get, as they're doing this, she's sort of, her posture is sort of leaning backwards kind of the whole time. She describes it. So her memory of the event is in and out. But she describes thinking that she was going to be pulled under the water and not let up, like pulled under the water and drowned. When Josh and Chris get ready to dunk her in the baptism, they were Baptists, so they were going to immerse her. He said the Trinitarian formula in the name of the Father or the Son, and then right before he says Holy Spirit, I guess she started going under, and Josh got the impression that she was she was falling. She got the impression she was being pulled. But anyway, he finishes Holy Spirit just as she's going under, and she comes up. And when she comes up, she's sort of gasping, like dry heaving, in a way that everyone's very quiet. Like no one really knew what to make of it. She's doing this dry heaving thing. They help her over to the side of the bank of the river, and she sits down, and she's just sort of like rocking back and forth. And it wasn't a reaction that anyone there at the church or Josh or Chris, who they've baptized, a lot of people in that river, it wasn't a reaction that they had seen before. And so they get, eventually her family gathers around her. They get her back in the car. Everyone kind of disperses. And then that evening, several people from the church that were there, some friends of Kristin who had started coming to the church, some her family, and some just people there at the church, started messaging Josh asking what happened in the baptism, which was a weird thing to ask. Normally, the person got baptized, and that's the story. But several of the people were asking if something had come out of Kristin in her baptism. And so Josh said, well, I'm not, you don't want to say that, especially as Protestants they're not charismatic. They're very buttoned down. At the time he was Reformed Baptist, very academic sort of people. He eventually said, I don't know, but here's what happened. He had been sort of researching back through church history, baptism practices, and had arrived at the conclusion that much like Luther, shortly after the Protestant Reformation and going back deep into church history, baptism was perceived as a sort of exorcism. And so there was a Lutheran minor rite of exorcism that Josh had incorporated into his prayer with Kristin out in the river before going to baptize her. And so between that and the reactions of everyone there, and then there was also a lot of stuff that we ended up uncovering in the course of Dark Holler and interviewing her and her family, going back a couple of generations, that seemed to lend credence to the idea that probably something happened in the baptism.